Welcome to Jurassic Park.
You sure about that?
I decided to make a real Jurassic Park using all Jurassic species in Jurassic World Evolution 2. Right away, you might wonder, why is this build not on the tropical map? Well, while this build does take inspiration from the infamous park from the novel and movie, it is not a recreation and then just swapping out the species. I am building an original park. And I didn't want to build that original park on the tropical map just because there are 2 building series currently running on the channel that both take place in the tropical biome. So I wanted to switch it up, and this is my favorite biome in the game. My first step was making a big lake. This would function as the ocean because we are pretending that guests arrive via ferry. This ferry then docks at the main entry plaza, which is situated right on the coast. I used this reference for the design of the plaza, with the arms extending into the water functioning as the docks. The entry plaza will include the visitor center, some amenities, and the view into the first habitat, the Brachiosaurus, as a nod to the magical first dinosaur encounter in the movie. Paths will branch out in 2 directions from the entry plaza, taking guests further into the park. By mixing up the path colors, adding a lot of details with decorations, and leaving a cutout for a pond, even a big plaza like this remains visually interesting, both from the ground and an aerial perspective. Between recordings, I added the terrain elevation to the landscape. I knew that I wanted a tall plateau behind the entry plaza to place the innovation center on top of, and throughout the rest of the map I added mountains, designing them as the backdrops of enclosures. In this mountain range you can see the C shapes that will house dinosaurs. The open, flat side is where the tour will come along. If you want tips on how to do spectacular landscaping in Jurassic World Evolution 2, like making mountains, volcanoes, canyons, check out a tips video I made about how to work with the terrain tools for the best results. I still want to turn this landscape that I made for that video into a park, and this real Jurassic Park build could have been done there, if not for the fact that this is a wild reserve full of dinosaurs already, many not from the Jurassic period. Tranking and selling all of them would have taken forever. So instead, I'll leave this for a future park build where we can actually incorporate the dinosaurs already there as was planned. Subscribe to see that build as well as many more in the future. With the snow brush, I started to outline the exhibits, adding an enclosure wherever I had imagined as I was doing the landscaping. Unfortunately, I would soon realize I had made a critical error, but more on that later. You can see that the enclosures were already carved carved out of the terrain. I'm really just outlining them for clarity as I build. Using a contrasting terrain brush to draw out your exhibits can really help in any build, so keep this tip in mind for when you are planning out your next park. It's a really easy way to sketch out a rough layout and quick to adjust when needed as you're figuring stuff out. As I was drawing, I fine-tuned some areas with the terrain tool, like adding this two-tiered semicircle that would allow vehicles to look into the enclosure from the lower tier, and guests to look out into the enclosure from a plaza on the upper tier. Things like this I don't plan in advance. It's more like I discover these little moments, these little details as I am building a park, and then I just add them in. Which is why starting with a rough sketch is such a great way to start. You can discover awesome opportunities for something special, and then you can really easily incorporate that into your build because everything is still flexible. Next, I added in a rough version of the tour track, and I say rough version because I had every intention of deleting this bit by bit as I figured out the definitive layout of the tour. I first just needed to make sure that I could create a functional loop that would take the tour vehicles by every exhibit that I had planned. Of course, I was already thinking about this as I was sketching the enclosure outlines, but I had to be sure that it would work. Tours being the main attraction of this park is of course inspired by the original Jurassic Park, which would eventually have had many attractions if not for its ill fate, but started with the simple tour taking guests by and through exhibits. Most of the herbivore habitats in the park the tours can go through, as they are relatively safe. Even though a Diplodocus did make a tour vehicle fly, unfortunately I only caught the end of it. All of the carnivore habitats, the track goes along the perimeter on the outside, so there's always fencing between the dinosaurs and the tour vehicles. Once I had made sure that I could make successful loops showing all habitats, I started replacing the tour tracks one section at a time with the definitive track layout, being more thoughtful with how I place the curves in the track to run alongside a carnivore enclosure or looping them through a herbivore enclosure. Placing the fencing was a simple matter of following the outlines I had drawn with the snow brush. Most of the fencing in the park is invisible fencing, so guests have an unobstructed but safe view of the dinosaurs and the beautiful surrounding environment. I also put in one aviary and one lagoon to house a mix of flying reptiles and marine reptiles respectively. We only have 2 flying reptiles and 3 marine reptiles from the Jurassic period. As the original Jurassic Park showed, a tour is not actually the best way to view dinosaurs because the animals could be hiding in the foliage right as your vehicle drives by. While I will be designing the enclosures with that in mind and trying to mitigate it, I also supplemented the main tour attraction with remote viewing galleries. Several of the biosin viewing towers as well as a couple of the log viewing galleries. The log viewing galleries can't be too far removed from the entry building, so that is why the park does have several stops, several guest areas along the track where people can get off the tour vehicle and access those log viewing galleries or go to some of the amenities there. Off camera, I then compiled a list of all species in the game that originate from the Jurassic era, and then I started writing down in-game where each of the species would go. And this is where I would discover I had made a mistake. For this task, I used the Jurassic World Evolution 2 toolbox, which has all sorts of helpful information for park builders, so I will link it in the description box, but I specifically used it for this easy overview of the eras that each species belongs to. The game called Jurassic World Evolution 2 has a key thing in common with the Jurassic Park that started it all. It mostly has species from the Cretaceous. To be exact, 73 species of the 106 total species are from the Cretaceous, and only 25 species are from the Jurassic. This proved to be a problem for my park build because I had too many exhibits. I had more enclosures than species, and worse still, because I wanted to have some mixed herbivore habitats, I had way too many exhibits. To remedy this, I deleted quite a few enclosures so that the biggest herbivore habitats could at least have a bit of a mix, even if it only ended up being 2 or 3 species together. All of the carnivores would still have their own habitat. Some habitats were cut by simply merging 2 neighboring ones into a singular habitat, others I deleted completely, which meant that the tour would go through some areas where there would be no dinosaurs at all, which obviously isn't ideal. 2 of those spaces I filled with extra guest sections, one being a regular area that would have hotels and amenities, and another that would be a campsite where more adventurous guests could stay the night, complete with a faux fossil dig site as an extra activity for campers to do during their stay in the park. These fake attraction ideas come from a video I did with 12 fake attractions that I recommend you check out. You can see that these tips come in handy in unlikely situations, like when you've made a bit of a miscalculation in your park layout and you need some space fillers. So with the addition of those space fillers, the park has 5 guest areas in total. The entry plaza is already completed. Here I am working on the area on top of the plateau, which, unlike the entry plaza, is more Jurassic World themed, with the innovation center and a lagoon. It also provides access to the Hyperloop system and has 2 towers at the front and at the back overlooking the park. This guest area at the top is only reachable via the monorail that connects one station off to the left side of the entry plaza with another station on top of the plateau, and the monorail just curves up the side of the mountain. Creating elevated plateaus like this is key for building awesome parks in my opinion, because it creates beautiful views from the top, but like this example, it allows the buildings at the top to function as part of the backdrop of lower situated areas. So for this park, you can see the visitor center from the Jurassic Park era in the same site as the innovation center from the Jurassic World era. I think in a real park, that would create a sense of curiosity, of wanting to get to that point that you see in the distance and explore that and see what it's all about. I added a lot of detail to all of these guest areas, and I wish I'd kept track of how much time I actually spent building this park. But since I didn't keep track and I also didn't record every step because it was just so much work, I have no way of knowing exactly how long it took. But it is one of my most time-consuming park builds ever, but over the course of only 3 days. I got so into this build that I became a little obsessed. Does that happen to you as well? Like, I was skipping meals and not leaving the house at all. I think the result is worth it though. I spruced up the mountainsides by adding a couple of fake waterfalls using an illusion with the snow terrain brush, which is a trick I first saw done by Crazy Cat Miri. I also used this technique in that terrain editing video that I mentioned earlier, which I again really recommend that you check out. I will link it at the end. The last but biggest step was to decorate the exhibits, which was a huge undertaking. For the exhibits, I made good use of the base foliage brush to avoid having to place an excessive amount of individually placeable trees. Because I was going for a natural look, I also decided not to create any new biomes within the taiga biome, so that meant not using trees from the tropical set, for example. Of course, I did still use quite a few individually placeable, biome-appropriate trees in certain areas, as well as placing a lot of rocks to add detail to the exhibits. This was another long process that I filmed only a small portion of. This park was truly a lot of work, so please give the video a like if you are enjoying it. That helps it out a lot in the algorithm and lets me know that you want more builds like this. A short showcase at the end of this video is not going to do this park justice, so of course I will be doing a long, dedicated tour for this park next week, which I hope you will tune in for. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you know you won't miss it. And because this park build made me realize that we really could use more Jurassic species in the game, I will also be doing a wishlist video in which I put together a late Jurassic species pack, just for fun. For now, let me know in a comment down below what your favorite Jurassic species is. Mine is Stegosaurus, which is my favorite dinosaur of all time. Thank you so much for watching, liking, subscribing, and until next time, enjoy the game.